Hi, I'm Catherine Dollar, and you're tuning in to Scholar Hangout. Today, we're going to be talking about some of the demands and expectations of those who teach applied creative thinking and how to overcome some of those obstacles. I'm here with Eastern Kentucky University co-directors of Noel Studio, an academic creativity and teaching and learning center. Ph.D.s Charlie Sweet, Hal Blythe, and Russell Carpenter have authored several books. Their latest is Teaching Applied Creative Thinking. Their work is focused on meeting demands for new higher education programs that incorporate creative thinking into curriculum. Gentlemen, thank you so much for visiting with me today. For those just viewing, we last talked to Hal and Charlie and Rusty about why professors are starting to incorporate creative thinking into their curriculum. And so the topic of some of the obstacles came up, which they're going to share with us today. So, gentlemen, what are some of the main expectations you feel are demanded of you as someone focused on teaching applied creative thinking in the classroom?
Teaching applied creative thinking is it's demanding and it's challenging. The CRE 101 course that I taught, that I've taught now twice, was one of the most challenging courses that I've taught since coming to EKU. There is an expectation to, as the professor, there's an expectation that you know everything that there is to know. You are the subject matter expert in that particular area. That's kind of the student's viewpoint, the student's expectation of you. And in the creative classroom, that's not always the case. You're looking toward the students to develop new knowledge and to contribute to the conversation. And you become more of a guide. You're helping them to see these concepts, to apply them in different ways. But then in some cases you're getting out of the way, and there's a different set of demands when it comes to the creative classroom. You have to have the subject matter knowledge, but then you have to know, when it's best to get out of the way, to let your students take over, and to let the students guide each other and to guide the class.
Well, let's widen the picture out here just a minute also. When you're talking college teachers, you've got to realize that college teachers are trained in a discipline. They'll get their Ph.D. like Hal in English. They aren't trained in pedagogy. There are almost no classes in graduate school in how to teach. College professors are encouraged to go to discipline-specific conferences. They are not encouraged to go to, say, a pedagogical conference. If they were interested, there aren't many conferences on creativity anyway, especially the pedagogy of creativity. As graduate students, they probably had what? No training teaching. They may have had a supervisor doing something with them, but they didn't take the coursework. So the background of college teachers is nothing like the background that you find, for instance, in K-12 teachers.
The creative classroom can be a really scary place for a teacher as well as for the students. As Rusty suggested, the demands, the dynamic is totally different from most of the traditional classrooms that we've been in and that we've experienced. It's a more open kind of situation. You cannot depend on a yellowed set of notes the way some of our old professors did as we were coming through, especially graduate study. You have to be more open to the kinds of things that might happen. If you're asking your students to be co-facilitators of knowledge and the creation of knowledge in the classroom, it's important that you allow them a little bit of freedom, and this is not usually the case in the traditional classroom. You have to be open to risk-taking. You have to be open to failure, both on your part and on the part of the students. And this is a difficult thing, especially for the kinds of teachers Charlie mentioned who are coming out of graduate school with no real training whatsoever in pedagogy, and now they're being asked to do something that is totally foreign from what they've done, especially in the graduate classroom, in a seminar, sitting around a table, drinking coffee, smoking a pipe, or whatever. And so it's a scary thing.
You have to be spontaneous, and because you've got to react to all the little things that students may do. You might analogize it to being a flight controller. It's really easy to be a flight controller at a podunk airport where there's one plane coming in every hour. Well, what happens if you're a flight controller at O'Hare and you've got loads of planes coming in at all times? That's what it's like in a creative classroom. You are at O'Hare Airport, you're trying to make sure none of the planes hit, they are all on separate glide paths. And so you are constantly on. You can't settle back and put two hands up on the lectern and start using one of your pat talks. You've got to respond to John over here who's having an argument with Chris over here. Who, the phrase we like to use is you are the mentor from the middle. You are actually, Rusty talked about it as being a guide. You are in the middle of everything that is happening, and you're there most of the time.
And that makes it a little bit difficult, too, for the teacher, because you do have to surrender, as Rusty said earlier, a little bit of that authority that the teacher is usually vested with. You have to be willing to surrender that to the students. You have to be willing to watch them as they oftentimes will make mistakes. And you know that perhaps they're going down a dead-end street, but you have to allow them to go down to the end and find that it's dead-end, rather than correcting and constantly being that the sort of micromanager we've heard about. And that's difficult for teachers to do at times.
Yeah. Yeah. The authority kind of transitions to the students. And I think to teach creativity is to relinquish that authority and give students the opportunity to share ideas that are new and in some ways provisional or untested, and to become comfortable with that. I think that determines, or it helps determine, the success of a truly creative classroom.
You're also not just a mentor, you're a model. You have to constantly exhibit the idea of creativity. For instance, Hal and I taught creative writing for years. The fact that we were writing and publishing in various magazines and in various books gave us something that we could draw on. So it's not just that you talk about it, creativity is one of those fields that you actually have to be able to do. And again, if faculty aren't trained to teach in general, think how little training there is right now being done on teaching faculty to be creative. They're really Johnny-come-latelys in the field.
And trying to get to that balance is a difficult thing. We do relinquish a good bit of our authority in the classroom, but we have to be aware that we are the instructor of note for that classroom. And even though we are using our students as co-facilitators in the creation of knowledge, we have to be sure as a model that we are indeed mentoring, that we are modeling, that we are coaching, and some of the things we mention in our book about teaching in the creative classroom. You have to be aware of yourself as a teacher fulfilling these roles. I think we mentioned 6 different roles that a creative classroom teacher has and must adopt, and that sometimes can be a difficult balance for us to achieve. It's a temptation sometimes in the creative classroom just to turn things over to the students and let them go and watch what they come up with, but there needs to be that bit of authority there so that they feel confident that, hey, if I fail, that's going to be okay because I have somebody back there as a backstop, as somebody watching my educational back, so to speak.
Yeah.
The Another obstacle we point to is, as we mentioned in both the introduction to applied creative thinking and the teaching of it, is that we say there are the nifty 9. These are 9 creative strategies, such things as using metaphor, perception shift, collaboration. You have to know these skills. Again, it's not something that the average faculty member is either trained in or utilizes on a daily basis. If, on the other hand, you are a writer, a creative writer, that would help you to be implementing these skills.
For a professor that has usually been a traditional lecturer, the classroom has been traditional in every sense, but they want to start incorporating more creativity into their curriculum, what would be some of the first steps? I know now as it's summer, so many may be thinking, what can I do to prepare for the fall semester? What would you recommend?
I think, first of all, they ought to do a little bit of research. You know, they used to tell us as faculty the summers are for reading. Well, they are for reading. They are for doing research. These skills just don't come out of the air. It's something you need to practice. For instance, one of the skills we highly recommend is collaboration. If you have never collaborated as a faculty member, either in the classroom, if you want to learn, teach a class with somebody else. Volunteer to teach a section. It doesn't be the whole 16 weeks. Teach 1 or 2 classes with somebody else. Learn how to collaborate. If you want to look at it from a scholarly point of view, write an article with somebody else. Instead of sitting in your own room, go get with somebody else and then negotiate the writing of this article with them. That's how you really learn what collaboration is.
One of the things that we would suggest, and sometimes this is a little bit beyond the control of the individual instructor, but setting up the classroom to encourage creativity can be an important step, rather than having these well-regimented rows in the classroom with the teacher's podium at the front of the class. Arrange things so that when students come in, they're sitting in groups, they're talking with each other over a table, perhaps, if you have an opportunity. We're really lucky here at Eastern to have the Studio for Academic Creativity because of the way the rooms here are arranged. The very room we're talking out of now is our Discovery Classroom with movable chairs and tables, with podiums that can change in class, with whiteboards placed strategically around and very movable kind of configuration. So one of the things that we might suggest in order to get the teacher and the students in the right frame of mind is a reorganization of the classroom in a physical sense.
And have the faculty member, if nothing else, imagine next fall you're going to teach this class from the middle of the class, not from the front of the class with the podium. You're going to be in the middle of the class. And if you can just picture that, how would you then ask yourself, how would I restructure what I'm going to do if I am going to be in the midst of my students? If I'm going to put my students in groups now, what am I going to do differently? Obviously, if they're sitting there in groups, you don't want to lecture to them. What good is the group?
You can also start small. Just select one assignment. In some cases, and we see a number of faculty members coming, to the studio with their students. Choose one assignment that you think could be more engaging or interesting, or creative, and start there. Or one particular lecture that could also be more engaging. Start there and move it into a kind of a more creative setting, whether it's integrating collaboration, or whether it's really focusing on what you want students to get out of that project or that assignment.
Yeah, to kind of piggyback on what Rusty's saying, Charlie and I used to do a lot of building, And one of the things that can buffalo a builder and a teacher as well is if you look at things from the large perspective from the very beginning, and it becomes almost overwhelming. And as Rusty says, if you start out with the kind of baby steps, the small steps, pick a couple of assignments that you might change from the traditional way of doing it, and get your feet wet as a teacher from the beginning. Don't think that this semester I'm going to totally change the paradigm of my class. I'm not going to do anything the way I've done it in the past. That is a formula for failure. If you start out with a small, get the feet wet kind of thing, this will be helpful to you, but it'll also be helpful to your students, and they will be more willing, I think, to adapt to this new way of approaching this creation of new knowledge.
Now, something I'm curious about, as you've mentioned, especially for the professor that's new to applying creative thinking in the classroom, is this idea of collaboration. Well, because this is really a new field coming into academia, how do you encourage faculty to accept creative thinking as part of their curriculum and encourage them to use that in their teaching methods?
Well, one of the things that we've done, the three of us, is hold some presentations and show them the possibilities of what they can do in the classroom. And again, we soft pedal in a way. We don't try to force anything on them. We simply say, here are some possibilities. Why not give it a try? And we have some forward-looking faculty, especially among our newer faculty, who are willing to step out and take a chance. Hey, I don't have any set way of doing things. Why don't I try this and see if it'll work? And we've had a little bit of success that way.
We talk a lot about process first and then product. We've tried to share some of the truly creative projects that students have developed in CRE 101 and beyond. And once faculty see what students are capable of doing in a creative classroom, I think the whole concept becomes a lot more intriguing. It becomes a lot more tangible too. We back out, after looking at products, we often look at process. So, what steps did the students take? What steps did the instructor take to achieve those outcomes? Because that process is really important. And it's difficult to articulate. We often see creativity as this thing, or this product, but there are intentional steps. There's a process that you can use in your classroom to facilitate that and to get the most out of your students. So we've opened these conversations. We've showcased the creative projects on campus, and then we attempt to break it down into its component pieces. Not so much in a way to suggest that we can tell each faculty member how to be creative in your classroom, but we're looking for faculty to take these concepts and repurpose them for their discipline.
And I'm going to piggyback on what you just said. See, I'm learning the terminology too. You mentioned you can't teach someone how to incorporate creative thinking or how they're going to be creative. So how do you convince students as well as faculty members that they are indeed creative and that's something that they need to pull out of themselves and use for the betterment of learning of those around them?
That's a good question, because we argue in the teaching applied creative thinking that creativity can be taught, but I think that the key for faculty is that it might look different, and these concepts can be repurposed and reorganized and rolled out to students in different ways. So creativity, so domain-specific creativity can look different, whether it's the configuration of a classroom or it's a redesign of a project for a specific group of students. And I think there's some anxiety with that. In so many cases, we're looking for answers. Okay, I want to be creative, so you tell me in the next 30 minutes how I can be creative. And it's a lot more complicated and complex than that.
Sometimes all you have to do is basically give them permission to be creative. A good instance of this is we run out of the studio new faculty orientation. And the very first thing we do with the faculty is we bring them into a traditional-looking classroom. And then we tell them that basically this is the wrong way to teach. What would you do differently if you could? And we encourage them right there to totally reconstruct the classroom. Take down the rows that we have set up, move in whiteboards, bring in the technology, whatever you want to do, whatever you can find. It's sort of like an HGTV episode, remodel this classroom. And they do it. They instinctively do it. No one has to really tell them what, but they start talking to each other, leaders develop, they piggyback on what others are doing, and suddenly they've redesigned this classroom. So again, all we really had to do was suggest there was something wrong with tradition and give them permission to change.
It's sort of like the old literary figure who discovers he's been speaking prose all his life. So many of our young teachers, especially our newer teachers, discover that they're more creative than they thought they were. It was simply their definition of creativity. It's so often, as Charlie said earlier, so often tied to the arts that they believe, hey, I'm in chemistry, I'm in physics, I'm in social studies, I can't possibly be creative. They have to get a redefinition of what creativity is. And they may find, and we have found in dealing with them, that indeed they are creative. It's simply the way they implement that creativity and the way they look at that creativity. So.
Absolutely. Now, just as in with any field, is it important to stay current in the applications of creative thinking? And if so, how does one stay current when this is just now being adopted? It's still new to academia.
Well, I think you're absolutely right, Catherine. You have to stay current. The research is coming out on a daily basis. So much of it, for instance, is the neuroscientists are telling us more about the way that the brain works. We find we have to do constant research. I'll bet you there's maybe one night a week that we don't take home some articles that we found. We've given them to each other. We pass them around. We put little notations on the side. We piggybacked on what somebody else has notated. And we are constantly sharing this knowledge. So you absolutely, you have to keep up with this. It wasn't until recently that we even started talking about creative thinking is cross-disciplinary. You know, it used to be, well, we'll teach about gifted children in the Department of Education. But now we're talking about traits that could be used with gifted children, with everybody, just right across the board.
Interestingly enough, going to current newspapers and popular magazines, there is not that kind of thing that we would define as hardcore scholarship, but there are a lot of interesting things coming out. And when you read some of the popular magazines that arrive, even magazines such as Esquire or Details, or some of those magazines that traditionally we don't think of in terms of scholarship, in terms of education, they're coming out with some interesting interviews about creativity, dealing with people, say in Hollywood, in the movie industry, and what they're doing in terms of creativity. And much of that will translate into the classroom, and some of the little gems that they give us are appropriate for use in our classroom teaching. So it's everywhere.
We're voluminous readers. I mean, we read every day. We read like the Wall Street Journal. we rip things out or we send the articles to each other about this kind of thing. But Hal's right. It's all, so much of it is in the popular media. You don't have to go out and get the latest issue of the Journal of Creative Thinking, which I don't even think exists yet.
New forums. That's what we need.
Well, exactly. That's why we're so glad to have you here sharing all this with faculty that may want to start at least thinking about incorporating creative thinking. There's obviously a demand rising in our education system, and students are benefiting from it. And on that note, I'd like to ask you, for either tenured professors that have become very accustomed to the lecture-style classroom to new adjunct faculty that are just new to teaching in general, what would you tell them? What is your advice or takeaway right now on how to start incorporating this or thinking about creative thinking?
Be open.
Take risks.
Talk with people.
And you know, new faculty traditionally don't want to take risks. They want to do 6 years, they want to keep their head down, and they want to get tenure, which we fully understand. If that's what you have to do to get tenure, fine. But if you really want to grow as a faculty member, you're going to have to take risks along the way. You're going to have to do, if you want to become outstanding in your field, if you believe truly in excellence, somewhere along the line you're going to have to be different from your colleagues. Now, maybe after your 6 years of getting tenure, but you still need to do it.
We're fortunate here at Eastern to have an administration that allows us here at the studio and in the Teaching and Learning Center to be open to these kinds of things and to espouse these things for our faculty members, even to the point of, and you mentioned a real hardcore group. When we start talking about tenured professors, the associates and full professors who have been teaching the same way maybe for 10 or 15 years, how to get them to even accept the concept of changing in the classroom and creativity. And that's been a pretty tough nut to crack for us, but we're making some headway by simply presenting these things to them and showing them that they're really dealing with a different student audience now, and there is a need for them to make some changes. They don't have to change 100%, totally flip-flop the way they've been doing things, but they do need to be aware that they're dealing with a different audience, and if they want to be effective, and majority of them do, this is one of the ways that they can be more effective in the classroom.
What's interesting to us, though, is we offer research opportunities. If people would like to write articles with us, conduct research, we're happy to do it. Interestingly, the people who take us up most often on that offer are what? Newer faculty and even students. It's not the senior professors.
Right, absolutely. Well, I want to welcome all of our viewers that if you have questions for our group today, that's Hal, Charlie, and Rusty, make sure to send those questions to the #ScholarChat. You can mention them on Twitter at Noel Studio. That's Noel Studio, STUDIO. And again, #Scholar Hangout. And of course, mention new forums. You can see that here on my screen because we'd love to answer any questions you have. And we'll also be directing resources your way to help you on your path to discovery about creative thinking in the classroom. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. I look forward. I know we have several blog posts that we're about to publish from you regarding creative thinking, mentorship, and education in the classroom. So we're very excited to learn more from you, and hopefully those viewing know that please accept their invitation to work with them on research and articles. This is a growing field that is in high demand, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you. Bye-bye.